Good afternoon, everyone. I too wanted to take a moment to say a huge thank you to you, our members, for your support during these unprecedented times and for taking the time to log on today. We've all been bowled over by what an incredible job the team at ILC have done to make not just this event happen online, but the weekly webinars that they've hosted in both home and motor since the impact of lockdown began. We've grown our partner base, we've grown our audience, and I was really excited to announce Zurich as our latest insurer partner and Copart as our latest corporate partner during lockdown. I'm really looking forward to this, our last keynote session of the week, for a whole bunch of reasons. I don't mind admitting I've struggled with many aspects of lockdown myself, and I'm passionate about supporting my teams in how we all deal with these challenging and difficult times. This session is about optimism and a positive mindset, and will help us all be better tomorrow through what we learned today. It's a fantastic way to end what's been an incredible week, where we've made so many new friends and learned so much that will enable us to deliver more great insight and networking from next week and beyond. There's no letting up though. Next week, Mark Hadaway is back with his first international webinar on Wednesday, where we'll be joined by Ian Thompson, the Global Chief Claims Officer of Zurich. So keep an eye open for that one. Like Eleanor, I can't wait for us all to be back together in a room and see you all face to face. But in the meantime, let's introduce our keynote speaker. Stuart Baldwin has been a regular at our events over the years, and he never fails to excite me. He is, in my mind, the CEO of all things positive, but in truth, he's the founder of Live Big. Please welcome to the screen a great friend of mine and ILC's, Mr. Stuart Baldwin.
Hey, good afternoon. Thank you, Chris. What a beautiful introduction. Chris is going to stick around with me, actually, and be my kind of co-host. We'll be like Ant and Dec. You can decide which is which. And hello to all the people I know on the webinar, those I haven't yet met. It's a massive pleasure to be here. I don't know if you remember March. It seems like a long time ago, right? Well, back in March, at the first week of March, I was about to go to Zurich to do some work with, actually, let me check in. Chris, is it still showing Chris's video, or are you seeing me? So somebody let us know in the chat. So to me, it looks like it's still showing Chris's video. So you can see me, Tamsin, is that right? Just let me check.
It might only show me when I speak, Stuart.
No, it's fine. It's just I've got a yellow box around you, but everyone's telling me it's working, so that's great. So back in the start of March, I was about to go to Zurich to do a piece of work with Deloitte, and I was seriously excited about it. It was a second a piece of work we were going to do together, and we had some real challenging things to do in a big retreat that we were about to run. And I got this call on a Monday morning, which was, we can't do it. All travel has been cancelled for Deloitte globally. By the end of that afternoon, my entire diary for the next 4 months had pretty much been wiped out. And I'm sitting there at home going, okay, this is something, something's going on here. What do I do with this time? Maybe it's time to rest. Maybe it's time to work on the book that I've always been too lazy to get around to doing. And as a couple of days passed, I felt this pull from inside my heart to, as well as doing those things, start to share some of the work that we normally only share with corporate leaders inside large organizations, some of them your own, for the people I know on this session, with anyone, to try to get it out there. So I set up my first webinar. Never done a webinar before, much like your experience, Chris. You're like, what the hell is this? Let's give it a go. So I set up my first webinar. It was on optimism. 200 people came. We were totally oversubscribed. So I just did it again. And then ever since then, every other week, we've been doing a new webinar. And you can see any of those for free on our website. I just wanted to get as much information out there as possible. But people start to see this, clients start to see this, other organizations like, oh, there's something here, this kind of works, it's kind of interesting. And this webinar for you guys today is my anniversary. It's the 25th Optimism webinar I've given since the start of lockdown. Because there's something about optimism that seems to be really for this moment in time. And however we are feeling, whatever we've been experiencing, it's okay. The sadness, the frustration, whatever suffering we've had, it's okay. And whatever the reality of this situation is, it's okay. It is what it is. And it's from that acceptance of both how we feel and what's going on around us that we can shift our thinking and focus on what we want. And that's the optimism idea that I'm going to share with you today. It's not positive thinking. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but it doesn't resonate with me so much, just straight positive thinking. Because positive thinking tends to be, you go to your garden and you look at all the weeds and you go, there's no more weeds, there's no more weeds. And then you come back the next day and guess what? The weeds are still there, right? Optimism is grounded in reality. It accepts, yeah, this is shitty. This is painful. This is interesting. This is challenging. Okay, fine. Let's not give it any juice. And from that, let's shift our attention to focus on what we want. Because human beings, we're very adaptable. We're good at change. The thing that makes us adaptable is mindset, our ability to manage our thoughts, our emotions, and from that, our behaviors. And it is, of course, possible, as we've all experienced, to manage our thoughts and emotions going through challenge like this, and perhaps even to grow and thrive through it. Today, what I want to do is share with you some headlines on optimism, some science, some stories, some things to make it practical. And then what you want is something to take away, something that's real, something that's practical for you. So we're going to work with one of your real challenges right now, and I'll live coach you on the webinar and give you a tool you can take away and use for other things. So you're going to work on a real challenge and take away a tool, as well as we'll set up all the big ideas. But before we get into that stuff, let's check in. I just want to know how you're doing. Let me ask you a question. And in the chat box, type in one of these two words for me. And Chris is going to read out what we see. Comparing yourself to 3 months ago, are you more or less happy? Just type in the chat box more or less. Let's check in, see where we are. And when you type in the chat box, try to type to all panelists and attendees, then everyone can see it. So try to select all panelists and attendees, and then everyone can see it. Compared to 3 months ago, are you more or less happy? Whatever is your answer. We just check it in. We're seeing how we're going. We'll get used to using the chat box a little bit. Chris, what are we seeing, buddy? You're on mute, Chris.
I was trying your space bar.
Oh, it didn't work?
No.
Okay.
So I'm seeing 50-50. And the good news is Eleanor is feeling happier, but that's because she joined ILC in April.
There you go. Okay, cool. So we've checked in. Let's throw ourselves into a little bit of context now and talk about where this optimism stuff we're going to do today comes from. It comes from a work that I teach and created over the last 15 years called Live Big, which, as I mentioned, mostly is about empowering leaders to create the best in themselves and bring out the same in their people. And we tend to talk about it through 3 filters. We say that there's a big idea. The big idea is that human beings, we've got more potential than we're realizing. We get in our own way. We make things harder than they need to be for happiness and for success. And that if leaders at work choose to draw that potential out of their people, and workplaces are places that empower that greatness in people, then the result of that is engagement, how people feel at work. And there's a whole lot of stories in science that throws that big idea at us. But big ideas are only useful if you can make them real. So to make it real, we teach a set of skills that we call powers. And that's great. We can learn skills, but we've all learned a new skill and failed to make it part of our lives, right? So our bottom layer is how we make it stick. For each of the skills, there's tools, and those tools enable us to incorporate it into our day-to-day life so that that power becomes part of our day-to-day life. These are the 6 powers that we teach. And I just mentioned this to give what we're about to do context, but let's play with this a little bit as we do. I'm going to throw up a poll. Now, you don't need to answer it until I've headlined each of these powers. But what I'm going to ask you is, if I could wave a magic wand and make you twice as good at one of these skills right now, which would you choose? And I'm going to headline them for you, and then you can vote, and then we'll share the results with everybody. So optimism, the one we're going to dive into today, is about mindset. Can I accept bad stuff's going to happen? Let's not dwell on it. And focus instead on what I want, what I can control, what I can do. Focus is about accepting our world is very complicated and we can be overwhelmed by the amount of stuff we have to do. Our ability to identify a small number of key things to focus on at any one time. Creativity, our ability to talk shit, to have ideas, to not be bound by convention and fixed thinking, to be wide open in our ability to draw new ideas and innovations together. Action is our ability to go from problem to plan really quickly. Not to get stuck, just to go, where am I now? What do I want? How could I get there? What will I do? Boom, off I go. Purpose is having a why behind what we do. Some meaning that drives what we do today. A story of our lives, a story of our work, a story of our company, a story of our team that's beyond our goals, that makes what we do make sense and gives us motivation. And finally, energy is our ability to tame ourselves internally, to manage our stress, to manage our frustration, to manage our beliefs and our fears, to know that how we think drives how we feel, and how we feel drives how we behave. To have equanimity in life, to maintain peacefulness. So the question for you in the poll, if I could wave a magic wand and make you twice as good at one power, which would you choose? Choose one now. And I'm going to close the poll in 5, 4, 3, keep voting, 2, still people voting, 1, keep voting. I see people still voting. End poll. Okay, share the results. Interesting. And nobody had voted for energy until I explained it, because it's a hard one to understand. But we're kind of split across the others. Energy is really interesting. It's the deepest of all the skills. And by the way, there's a webinar that I did on that right at the start of lockdown that's available on the website if you want to go check it out after this. But for today, we dive into optimism. And as we do, we have some context for it. We understand that this power, for me, comes from this deeper system, 6 skills, a blend of mindset and strategy that enable us to live big. But optimism is important. It's probably the most helpful for us right now, because it's not the events that happen to us that define our happiness and our success, but how we interpret them. We think that success drives happiness. When I get this, then I'll be happy. But it doesn't quite work, does it? Because when you get something, what happens? You just want something else, right? Not only doesn't it work, it's the other way around. Happiness drives success. Our brain performs significantly better at positive than it does at negative, neutral, or stressed. Dopamine lights up the learning centers of our mind. Doctors primed to be in a positive state before diagnosing patients diagnose patients 20% faster. Children primed to be in a positive state before putting blocks together, put blocks together 50% faster. My favorite of all the stats is that optimists will live 20% longer than pessimists. This guy, Dr. Martin Seligman, was studying insurance salespeople with the MetLife company just before the 2008 intake of salespeople. He found that those salespeople who scored above average for optimism sold 37% more insurance. Optimists are more creative, more engaged at work, more productive, have a better chance of promotion, suffer from less stress, and have better health. The data on optimism is rock solid. But how does it work? Well, optimism is a mindset skill. It's our ability to accept it is what it is. Stuff happens, and from there to shift our thinking to what we want. Now, when we say accept, we don't mean that what's happening is acceptable. And we're not saying that we don't want it to change in the future. We're just saying that you probably don't have a time machine. So you probably can't go back and change things that already happened. And you probably don't control a whole load of stuff that influences the things that get to us. Like right now, we can't control the coronavirus. We can influence, we can do the things we can do, but we can't control really what happens that much outside of ourselves. We can't control our government's decisions. We can't control our company's decisions. We can influence, but we can't control. We actually control far less than we think we do. And there's something good about that, because it allows us to go, okay, fine. And we're not saying we're not going to change it in the future. We're just saying this is how our world looks right now. At the start of lockdown, that was important for me. It took me a while to get there, but okay, fine. All my work's gone. It's just how it is. But that's only the first part. That lets us off the hook. The second part is our ability then choose our mindset. Where do we want to put our attention? What do I want to focus on? So for me at the start of lockdown, it was helpful to go, okay, what can I do? How can I serve? Maybe I can't work, maybe I can't make money, but how can I help? And by doing that, other things flowed. And actually there's been plenty of revenue that's been able to come in from doing virtual work, which has been amazing to discover. But it's the accept and the shift that allows us to find optimism. Let me ask you, have you felt any of these in the last few months? Open up the chat box. Whichever you have felt, just put that number in the chat box, and in a moment Chris is going to tell us what we are seeing. Have you felt anxious, stressed, angry, frustrated, scared, trapped, tired? Have you felt any of those in the last few months? I think I felt all of them yesterday. But whatever it is for you, it's fine. We're just curious. We're just checking in. Chris, I know it's not the easiest thing to read out of the chat box, but what are we seeing in there?
So I think we've got a mixture here of people saying all of them, which was certainly the lever I pulled. And then I think some people have probably interpreted this as pick one that you felt most, and fairly even spread, but I'm seeing a lot of fours coming through.
Great. Wonderful. And all those things are normal things. To feel frustrated is normal. Trapped is one that normally comes up pretty high when I ask this question. Do me a favor, just hit the raise hand icon if you feel like you've maybe felt some of those things more than you did before we started to get into this coronavirus situation. And just hit the raise hand icon if you feel like you felt some of those things. And my screen is now full of raised hand icons. So the interesting thing to contemplate is feeling those things is of course normal, and it is of course okay. And we are not saying with any of this work that we shouldn't feel those things. We absolutely should. But it's interesting to ask ourselves, when we think about those things, have we been able to accept that we feel them? So instead of going, I shouldn't be anxious, I shouldn't be stressed, I shouldn't be frustrated, go, yeah, okay, fine, I feel anxious. Yeah, okay, fine. Because we have a tendency to want to push those feelings away. Now, if we accept that feeling, from there, we can shift and focus on what we want. And optimism is in how we think and how we talk. Do we say, oh, I hate this situation, it's awful, I'm so anxious, I'm scared, I can't cope? Or do we say, okay, it is what it is, this is just what's happening right now? Do we say, my life is totally restricted, I can't do these things? Or do we say, okay, fine, I can't do those things, but I can do these things, I'm going to get excited about that? We accept and we shift to focus on what we want. Do we say, and this is mine, obviously, my work is cancelled and my industry has collapsed, my pension is on the floor? Or do we say, okay, now's the time to innovate, we're all in the same boat? Do we focus on what we don't want, or do we focus on what we do want? Dr. Seligman calls this our explanatory style, the way in which we describe the events of our lives to ourselves. And we ask ourselves, why does this work? Why does managing our thoughts and our feelings drive higher performance, drive better results? Well, it works because of one simple, unavoidable truth. What you focus on, you get. That's the way our brains are wired. Let me give you an example of that right now. I want you to look around the room that you're in, the space that you're in, and just notice stuff that's all around you, and into the chat box as fast as you can, type as many things that you can see. And Chris, as soon as you start seeing stuff, tell us what we're seeing in the chat box. So look around the room that you're in, and whatever you see around you, type it into...
Pencil, pictures, TV, lamps, pens, stationery, crikey, a door. Someone's got a cat. We have signed pictures and books.
Okay, great. Pause there, pause there, pause there. I want you to look around the room again. This time look for things that are blue. Look around the room. This time look for things that are blue. Now, hit the raise hand icon if you notice different stuff the second time to the first. I'm just asking, did you notice different things the second time to the first? Hit the raise hand icon if you did. Okay, that's tons of people. Maybe not everybody, but it'll be most of us. And that doesn't come as a massive surprise to us, does it? Because we're looking for different things the second time to the first. But we rarely associate that with how our brains work to filter our lives. But that's exactly how they work. Our brains do not notice everything around us. They notice those things we choose to focus on. This is a research project done by 2 Harvard psychologists. In this research project, the younger guy is a researcher and he walks up to the older guy who's a pedestrian and he asks him for directions. Watch what happens now as 2 men carrying a door walk in between them and the researcher swaps for the guy at the back. 50% of the time, the pedestrian doesn't notice that they're now talking to somebody completely different. It's a phenomenon known in psychology as change blindness. We often don't notice large differences in a visual scene. And this is great news because your brain is fantastic. It's this wonderful processing device and it doesn't waste its energy on things that are not important. Only 0.001% of all the things that come in through our senses, through our subconscious mind, get alerted to our conscious mind. How does our conscious mind, how does our brain know what to alert to our conscious mind? Well, it's what we choose to focus on. If you've ever come out of a long relationship, all of a sudden, every song on the radio is about love. If you've ever wanted a new car and you're driving around in your old car, you see much more of the car you want to buy on the road than you've ever seen before. Our brains do not see the world in cold, hard reality. We do not notice most of the stuff that happens around us. We notice what we're choosing to focus on. So if you walk into a meeting or these days onto a Teams or a Zoom meeting thinking, this is going to be a waste of time, what will you notice? If you walk into your days at work feeling like, what are we going to do with claims volumes this low? How are we going to survive? What will you notice? Now, it doesn't change reality, it just changes our filter on reality. Because likewise, if you walk into a challenging situation like the one that we might be in now, going, what's good about this? How can we grow through this? How can we innovate? How can we learn? What will you notice? It doesn't change reality. It just changes the way our brain filters our world so we spot different things. What you focus on, you get. The Derren Brown version of that study, even more fun.
Sorry, are you able to get some calls from here?
Yeah, you're welcome back.
Okay. Is it
Go through to here.
Do you know where we are on here?
Which direction do we go? Hang on, just get my bearings. Full speed, right, okay, we are...
Is that down in this direction there?
Yeah, that road there is Old...
So this is the science that drives optimism. What you focus on, you get. If we're focused on the tension that exists between buyer and supplier, what will we notice? How will that make us feel? How will we then behave? If we're focused on how can we grow the quality of this relationship between buyer and supplier, what will our mindset be? How will we feel? How will we then behave? If we're focused on, I can't homeschool my kids and work at the same time. I'm failing my children and I'm failing my workplace. How will someone feel if they're thinking like that? Not great, right? How will that make them behave? Maybe short and frustrated at work, maybe snappy with their children. What you focus on, you get. Our mindset is what's in our control. In that same situation, we could choose to think, I'm not a teacher, I'll do my best here and see what happens. And maybe I'll give my kids some education they wouldn't normally get at school, and that'll be interesting and different. And work's going to look different for a little while, but I'll show up and do the big things, and that's what'll matter. And if I think like that, how will I feel? Energized, excited, pleased to be there. How will I behave? Great with my colleagues, fun with my children. How we think drives how we feel, drives how we behave. And what you focus on, you get. So that's why this model works. We need to be able to accept the reality of our situation so as not to give it unnecessary focus. We cannot afford in normal times to dwell or to brood on that which we cannot control, that which has gone wrong, that which we cannot change. But especially now, because so much is change around us. We cannot afford to go, I wish it was like this should be different. Why isn't it like that? We have to accept, okay, fine. We're not saying it's acceptable. We're not saying we're not going to change it. We're just, that's the way it looks. All right. What do I want? Because what I focus on, I get. How do I want to think? How do I want to feel? What do I want to achieve? What do I want to do? All right. Let's make this real for ourselves right now. On a piece of paper, and please, please, please do this. I don't know what situation you're in, but unless you're driving and listening to this on audio, please do this. This makes the world of difference. Get yourself a piece of paper, a loose piece of paper, not your regular notes, something you can get rid of later. And on that piece of paper, write down one problem, one fear, one worry that you have right now coming from this situation. Now, maybe it's to do with work, claims volumes. What do we do with our team? How do we restructure? Maybe it's to do with life. I can't get the kids to go to bed on time, you know, or what are we going to do about our summer holiday this year? Big thing, small thing, doesn't matter. Maybe it's a worry about your health or your family's health. Doesn't matter. Big thing, small thing. Put something down on this piece of paper. And here. And whatever it is, it's fine. You're going to work with it. I'm not going to ask you to share it. I'm going to ask you to share some other things later on, but not to share your problem. So whatever you've got, it's for you. It's for you to explore, you to play with. And let's look now at why acceptance might matter. And there's three big reasons from psychology. The first is we worry more than we need to, and worry creates stress. Stress, incredibly bad for our immune system. They say that chronic stress, long-term stress, is 10 times worse for us than smoking is. And right now, the thing we need the most is a healthy immune system, right? Secondly, we tend not to see reality, as we talked about already, as it is. We tend to see it a little bit worse than it is. We tend to over-dramatize. That's the nature of the human mind. And performance, what you focus on, you get. When you focus on what you want, you have ideas, you take action, you move towards it, you're energized. When you focus on what you don't want, you feel flat, you feel disempowered, you feel like a victim. Acceptance, we could sum up as this. If it's raining, are we all like, oh, my day's ruined. I hate rain. I was going to do this and I can't. It's so rubbish. Oh, I don't want to get wet. Why wasn't it sunny like it was? Are we like that? Or are we like, yeah, it's raining. Fine. Let me check in with you. Doesn't matter which one we are. It's all right. But are you more A or B? Put it in the chat box. Chris is going to tell us what we see. Are you more A or B? A is it's raining and I complain about it and I don't like it and I'm stuck in it. Or B is something happens like it's raining and I go, yeah, fine, it's raining. Chris, what are we seeing in the chat box?
So you've obviously made an impact already, Stuart. Most of our audience are saying they are B. Good.
Well done. That's the skill. Now, what we notice is we might be good at doing that when it's raining. How good are we at doing it when our work falls off a cliff or something goes wrong in our relationship or our children annoy us? There are some things that will trigger us more than other things. And all of our suffering, and all of us suffer, it's part of the human experience, all of our suffering comes from one thing: the gap between our expectations and our reality. When life doesn't look how we think it should. And I'm not saying don't have expectations. I'm just saying there's a subtlety here to the human experience. Our ability to want things, but be unattached from needing life to look like that in order to feel fulfilled, happy, centered, settled. Wow, a lifetime's work, right? But just that simple fact is so powerful for us to recognize. When we suffer, it's because our expectations don't match our reality. And we blame the circumstances of our lives. I got made redundant. We lost all our business. I got really ill. I couldn't do the things I wanted. Something really bad happened. And those things, of course, are what trigger our suffering. But it's not that that causes the suffering. It's the way we process it internally. To paraphrase the Dalai Lama, if there is something you can do about it, well, guess what? There's no need to worry. If there's nothing you can do about it, well, guess what? There's no need to worry. Now, it's easier said than done because we worry by nature, most of us. But that's the challenge. Let me ask you a question. Have you worried about any of these in the last few months? And I can throw that up as a poll for you. So I'm just curious, just a little check-in. Have you worried about any of these in the last few months? Just answer that poll as quickly as you can right now. Your health, others' health, finances, uncertainty about a future, family, work, how to get about normal life. Have you worried about any of these in the last few months? You can vote for as many as you want. And I'm going to close the poll in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. People are still voting. Okay. I'm going to end that poll. I'm going to share the results with you. So uncertainty about the future wins for us. That's interesting. And maybe we're thinking about that, especially from an economic and a business point of view. Well, let me ask you, did worrying about it help? If there's something you could have done about it, you can do it anyway, right? If there's nothing you could do about it, no point worrying about it. Did worrying about it help? Maybe, maybe not. Was it in your control or out of your control? If it's in your control, no need to worry. If it's out of your control, no need to worry. How did it make you feel? Was the emotion you got from the worry helpful or not? This makes us contemplate a little bit the value of the worry. We can get that we are higher performing when we're not stressed, because when we're stressed, it closes down the left prefrontal cortex, the thinking part of the brain. We're not able to think clearly or act clearly. But still, we all get worries. We all get stress. It's a natural part of life. I've had pretty much all of those in the last few months. But why? Why is this how we're programmed? Well, we learn it as children, for sure. Our parents, teachers, society shows us that we should get cross about stuff. If something matters, you've got to get angry about it. Maybe, maybe not. But it also comes from our ancient cave person past. Human beings are driven by two strong primal forces. The first is our desire to seek pleasure, where from our cave person past, pleasure meant food or a mate. And the second, from our cave person past, is our desire to avoid pain. And that meant attack from a tiger or a warring tribe. Now, because the avoid pain stuff is game over stuff, it can kill you. We are all more hardwired to avoid pain than we are to seek pleasure. It's what psychologists call a negativity bias. Our brains are not a happiness system, they're a survival system. We have to teach them how to be a happiness system. Raise the hand icon for me if you have ever worried about something that turned out to be irrelevant. Have you ever worried about something and then I was like, oh, did it turn out not to matter that much? I've got a screen full of raised hands. Turns out that 93% of the things we worry about are irrelevant. And that's what I was asking before. When we were saying I've worried about these things, did it help? Did it make a difference? For some things, 7% of things, it makes a difference. For most things, we worry more than we need to. So this is where optimism helps, our ability to accept, yeah, that's fine. Let's focus on this. We can let go of things. We don't need to be so blown around by the winds of challenge. Now, I know this is tough. Of course it is. I've been working on it for 20 years and I still have days where I fail. But on those days when you fail, remember this guy. His name is Randy Pausch, and he was a lecturer at Carnegie Mellon University in the United States of America. And they have a tradition there they call the last lecture. They ask faculty to give a speech as if it's the last one they're ever going to give. The kicker for Randy was, this was the last lecture he was ever going to give. He was 47 years old, and he was dying of pancreatic cancer. And the lecture he gave has been watched by millions of people on YouTube. It's called The Last Lecture. It's beautiful if you haven't seen it. And it was life lessons he was leaving behind for his kids. But that's not the most remarkable thing about him. I think this is.
I've been fighting pancreatic cancer. It has now come back after surgery, chemotherapy, and radiation. And the doctors tell me there's nothing more to do and I have months to live. I have 3 little kids. Let's be clear, this stinks. But I can't do anything about the fact that I'm going to die. I'm pursuing medical treatments, but I pretty much know how this movie's going to end. And I can't control the cards I'm dealt, just how I play the hands. You better decide early on if you're a Tigger or an Eeyore. Tiggers are energetic, they're optimistic, they're curious, they're enthusiastic, and they have fun. And never, ever underestimate the importance of having fun. I am dying soon, and I am choosing to have fun today, tomorrow, and every other day I have left.
Randy died about a year after that was filmed. That was a reprieve that he did on Oprah. But whenever I think about him, I think about 2 things. Firstly, on my worst days, what excuse do I have not at least to try to show up as the human being I want to be? And secondly, his words, I am choosing to have fun. He reminds us that how we feel is a choice, even though it doesn't always feel like it. He could, in his right mind, say, well, I feel awful because this thing happened to me. But he's saying, well, this thing happened to me, but I still get to choose how I respond to it. That's the whole basis of understanding our own psychology, that we are more in control of how we feel because of how we're more in control of how we think than we realize. And my favorite of all of the things he says, the best for us right now is this: you can't control the cards you're dealt, just the way you play the hand. So let's make this real for us right now. And I'll drop out the slideshow so I can live coach you on this a little bit. What I want you to do is think about your problem, the problem that you wrote down, and ask yourself, can you accept that that is what it is right now? You're not saying it's acceptable. You're not saying you're not going to change it in the future. You're just saying that, yeah, okay, fine. That's the way the world looks right now. In the chat box for me, yes, no, or maybe. And whatever your answer is absolutely fine. Whatever your answer is absolutely fine. Can you accept it is what it is, yes, no, or maybe? It might be helpful. Does it make you feel a way you don't want to feel? Might be helpful to accept it. Does it bring unhelpful behaviors? Is it something you can control? Is it something you can't control? And if it's a no or a maybe there's something getting in the way, like a belief. A belief is if you believe that the world should be fair and something happens that's not fair, and I go to you, well, can you accept that that thing happened? You'll go, well, no, because it shouldn't. The belief that the world should be fair is laudable, it's helpful, but in that case, it's getting in your way and causing you suffering. Why? Because the world's not fair. So your belief conflicts with reality. So it's yes, no, or maybe. Chris, what are we seeing in the chat box broadly?
Unresounding yeses, Stuart.
Okay, well done, guys. Great work. But know that if it's a maybe or if it's a no, like Georgina just gave us a maybe, that's okay. If your dog just died this morning, you're not going to be walking around going, that is what it is. You know, that's weird. This is not a tool for all moments. It's a tool for the 93% of things that we worry about unnecessarily. All right, let's move it on. First part of the model, accept. Second part of the model, what do you want? I'm going to coach you through 4 questions. And we're going to do it pretty quick. And what I'd love you to do is whatever's coming up for you, just type it in the chat box. And Chris very rapidly is going to give me what he's seeing in the chat box. First question, instead of focusing on the problem, now that you've accepted it, what do you want to think? Level number 1, what do you want to think? What mindset might be helpful to take in your situation? Pop it in the chat box for us. Love to see what you're working on. So an example might be if the person is, their problem is, I'm homeschooling, then what they might want to think about it, can I accept I can't be a perfect teacher? Yes, I can accept that. Okay, what do I want to think? I want to think I'll do the best I can. I want to think this is going to be fun. I want to think this is going to be interesting. Chris, what are we seeing in the chat box?
We're seeing pragmatism, we're seeing positive, everything will be okay, pragmatic acceptance, positive realism, learning, I'm always doing my best, I will be a success.
Yeah, fantastic. And those last 2 from Georgina and Abigail are really helpful. I'm always doing my best, it's fine. Mitch's mindset, yes, I can find a way to improve this. Okay, so we choose how do we want to think around the situation? What mindset do we want to take to it? Like Joanne says, I want to think things are going to recover. It's going to be okay. That's going to be a helpful mindset. Question number 2, how do you want to feel in this situation? Pop in the chat box for me. How do you want to feel? Randy Powell says, I am choosing to have fun. He wants to choose fun. What emotion do you want to be experiencing in this situation? Somebody teaching their kids and working at the same time might say, well, I just want to feel relaxed and enjoy it. Chris, what are we seeing in the chat box?
We are seeing good, positive, more positive, contentment, content, confident, positivity, happy, in control, calm, acceptance, confident, comfortable.
Okay, great. Chris, yeah, you went on mute at the end there, but it's all good. We heard most of it. Third one, what do we want to achieve? Now, this is interesting. This is a goal. Goals are, I will have achieved this by then. So let me ask you, around your problem, you've accepted it is what it is. What do you want to achieve? Now, maybe all you want to achieve is I stop worrying about it. But maybe you want to achieve, we'll have found 2 new clients within 6 months that we never had before. We'll have changed our systems so that we can respond to things like this really fast within 1 month. I'll have innovated the business so this section of it works online. What do you want to achieve? We'll have halved our cost base by this time. I'll have written my book by the end of the year. What do you want to achieve instead of your problem? If you're thinking about your problem and you're focusing on what do you want to achieve? As fast as you can in the chat box for us, really helps us out. Chris, what are we seeing?
So we're seeing stability, to not dwell on it too much and live in fear, resolution, accomplishing targets, progression and improvement, success, a plan to improve, improvement, success, better model that gives security, inner peace, confidence, self-acceptance and achievement, resolve, success, improvement, family happiness.
Fantastic. Perfect. Thank you. And the last one, what do you want to do? Now, this is what you want to do no matter how small. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step. Optimism is our belief that our actions will make a difference to our future. So what I'm asking you now is, thinking about your problem, instead of focusing on that, you're accepting it and you're focusing on what can I do tomorrow, the next day, a small, gritty action. Put it in the chat box. What's your first small, gritty action? Because when you're focused on the problem, you feel like a victim. When you focus on what you can do and you start to take action, you feel empowered. So if you write this in the chat box, you make a commitment to yourself and to other people. What are you going to do today, tomorrow, the next day? Some small first steps. Chris, what are we seeing?
We are seeing taking control, support, open and honest conversations, get it done, take time to be mindful and feel gratitude, keep at it, do better than I did yesterday, build up confidence, fill my life with doing things that bring me joy, keep on trucking, and think about me.
Okay, great. Let's pause at that point. Okay, so I've given you a very quick hit on a tool. And tools are meant to be simple because they take the complexity of something and make it grabbable and usable. You'll get a follow-up note, I think, from Eleanor, and it should include a worksheet, so you can use that worksheet to practice it. I'd love it if you just ran this exercise on 2 more problems, because it's like I've given you the piece of gym equipment, but you don't get skilled at it unless you practice on it, unless you use it. And this is a skill. The more we practice this way of thinking, the more habitual it becomes for us. So we're almost at a close, but I've got a couple more quick questions for you. Now that you understand what this skill is, let me ask you, in the last 3 months, how good have you been at this skill? Scale of 1 to 10. 10 is I have been world class, could not have been better. 1 is I've been awful. Give me a number in the chat box. In the last 3 months, how good have I been at this skill? 10 is I have been absolutely world class. 1 is I've been absolutely awful. Chris, use your magical calculator brain to tell us what you think the average is. What's the average?
I think the average is looking like 6.
Okay, perfect. Now answer this question. In the next 3 months, how good would you like to be at this skill? Scale of 1 to 10. 10 is world class, 1 is awful. In the next 3 months, how good would you like to be at this skill? Chris, using your magical calculator brain, what's the average?
15 has just thrown it out, but it looks like about 9.5.
Okay, cool. So if your second number is bigger than your first, and I think that's probably true for most of us, then 2 things make the difference. 1 is, okay, you've got a tool now. You've got a structure, a way to do it. You've got some science that persuades you, but you probably kind of knew that instinctively anyway. You've got a tool, accept and shift, accept and shift. The problem comes up, you don't feel how you want to do, accept and shift. But the second thing is also crucial. The second thing is awareness. You have to notice how you're thinking. You have to notice how you're feeling. Because we go through our whole lives on autopilot. So we've got to check in with ourselves. How am I doing on optimism? Here's a way you can do that. Go after this session, find a little elastic band. And what I'd love you to do is stick that elastic band on your wrist. And then every time during the day, you accidentally see that band, flick it, oh, there it is. That's your check-in. It creates awareness. How am I thinking? How am I feeling? How am I doing on optimism? And if you're able, for a week, every time you check it, to say, yeah, I'm 8 out of 10 or above, then you can lose it. You don't need it anymore. But if every time you check it, and Abigail says, I have a bracelet with beads to do this, brilliant, that's perfect. If when you check it, you're below an 8, you have to flip it over to the other wrist and start again. The game is to try to go 7 days. Because mindset is awareness, do I notice how I'm thinking, plus stories, optimism story, acceptance shift, plus repetition. Get 7 days of staying above 8, you'll have the skill. All right, let's finish with one thing. Take the piece of paper that you wrote the problem on, hold it up in the air, screw it up into a ball, and then throw it at something in your room. If there's a child, a dog, something around you, try to hit something in your room. And then hit the raise hand icon just to let me know you did that. Let me know that you threw the piece of paper. Hit the raise hand icon. Okay, that's everybody clicking in with the raise hand icon. Fantastic. It's been a real pleasure to share this quick hit of optimism with you today. I really believe this is an essential skill for all of us for our lives. And when we look back on this moment in time, I think we want to feel like we were able to be the best version of us, to manage our mind and our thoughts so we showed up the best we could for ourselves for this moment of our lives, but also so that we showed up for the people around us the best way we possibly could, and that we showed up for our companies and our community. It's within our grasp to manage ourselves as best we possibly can, so we show up for the world the best possible human being we can. Chris.
Stuart, thank you so much. I'm going to do this the other way around next year. I'm going to have first session, if not a private session, because I'm sure you can help me smile my way more through hosting this event next year. And thank you so much. I think, great way to finish a great week. Hopefully everyone's going to take the insight we've shared from claims and the stuff that matters to us all as human beings and our families, and become a little bit better through what you've kindly shared with us today. And we're going to share your content. So thank you very much for agreeing that we can do that, Stuart. I want people to go visit livebig.how. And we'll also send some links out on the breakfast news and through the Isle of Claims follow-ups from this session, because, this kind of stuff isn't just for COVID. It's going to make us all better people moving forward. So thank you, sir.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Everybody have a great day and a blessed weekend. Have fun. Stay safe.
Thanks for your support, everyone. Great to see so many familiar names in the audience again, and can't wait to see you next time.